Well, this brings back memories. So I made a little trip to the pawn shop today. We got some Crown Vic parts. I found me a Siren box, and I found a light bar box here. Whoops. Let me get that. I had two of them, but I think I'm missing the wiring. The guy just gave me the one. So, here. Sorry about the lighting. And, so this is for the light bar, and this is for the siren and the PA system that I'm hoping to put in. I'm having a hard time finding a wiring diagram for it. I found a partial one, but it didn't. I found a partial one, but it didn't have everything I needed so far. So I'm looking for an actual schematic. So hopefully I can find one of them here soon, and we can get this thing hooked up in the Crown Vic. But until then, we're going to fit it and get some measurements and go from there, because, well, I'm looking forward to putting it in. So this is the console I found for the Crown Vic. Don't mind, I didn't give $125 for it. I got a smoking deal on it. But it's got the mounting tray on the bottom. It's got 3 auxiliary powers, like cigarette lighter ports. And I think that's probably where either a laptop or a shotgun stuck in. I don't know how old this is. And an armrest. But if you look in here, you can actually slide this back and forth, so it actually is all set up so we can fit it in the optimal spot for whoever is operating the vehicle. So the plan is we're going to get all this stuff fit into the car and all set, and hopefully get the brackets and everything made to set it in, set like all the stuff into the box that needs to be in there, and then from there hopefully we can find a wiring diagram, because if you look under the dash of the car, all the wires are still there. So if I can trace the wiring diagram, I can just splice into that wiring harness and everything will already be run. Well, anyways, that's the idea, but y'all have seen me work on enough stuff to know that I have some good ideas that rarely work out. But let's get to working. So what I've had to do here in order to find the start building my own schematic is I took off the bottom cover, and I've figured out which wire goes where, so I can start labeling them myself, and then get this all done up. That way I can figure out which power line is which power line, where the grounds are, and what all these other ones go to. So let's get that all done up and get everything labeled. When you don't have access to a good schematic, sometimes this is what you have to do. You just have to trace the wires, be very careful. That way you don't blow out anything, but eventually you get it if you take your time and are patient and have a basic idea of what you're looking for. So let's get this finished up and move on from there. So I've gone through and labeled everything. I think I've figured out where every wire goes. All of these auxiliary and ground switches and all that, but there's 2 ground wires that I'm not quite sure on, but they both, one goes to the fused box and the other one goes to a flasher relay inside. And this right here is kind of confusing, but we'll figure that one out. I think it goes to the box up front, so we'll have to just try that out, but we'll get everything lit up and get it all drawn out and get that taken off it. I didn't pay $49 for it. I got a smoking deal on it, so that's why I love pawn shops. We'll get this all done up, we'll start testing it, figure out where everything goes, and then go from there. It's a little chilly this morning, so while we're waiting for it to warm up, or the truck to warm up and the outside, got to run to the auto parts store to see if we can't find a few things I need. Okay, so preliminarily, big word, this is what's going to happen now that we're sitting out here in the Crown Vic. This is what I need to do. The console is going to sit right here, and it's going to come up to about here, which is probably why this is broken off. Well, maybe not. But we need to figure out, you know, these mounting holes here. And looks like there's a mounting hole here. And if there's anything else here on the sides, that way, when we go to hook up our console, we're not drilling new holes. So what's probably going to happen is I'm going to have to crawl under the car, get into the tunnel, and start digging around on the floor and into the tunnel to see if there's anything that was pre-drilled. That way I can put bolts to the same holes, seal them back up, and I don't have potential rust spots. Now, let's work on to problem number 2. This is problem number 2. This is the wiring harness that was plugged into all the police lights and sirens and boxes and whatnot. So this right here it runs under the dash. It's its own separate harness. So I'm going to have to take this and trace it. It's probably going to be hooked in through this right here somewhere. And we're going to have to find out where it's all been spliced. Now granted, I'm betting part of this harness was probably missing because there's this hole here. And there's a bit of it that was probably running out this hole. So we'll have to deal with that later. But this is my thinking. There's a very real reason I'm hoping I can use the original factory police wiring harness. And that's because it's already routed through the fuse box up front. It has diodes, and it's got all the safety equipment still attached to it. It's all fused. It's all got all diodes. The relays are all still there. It's weird. Everything is still there. All the wiring and fuses and block and everything's still in this car. They just removed the physical equipment. So if I can actually figure a way to route it through all the original police wiring, I won't have to do anything else but trace some wires and plug it in. I won't have to run wires to the lights or anything like that. I am going to have to run a speaker because they did take the speaker out. But aside from that, it'll all the safety precautions and everything, and the fused and the diodes and whatnot are already in place. So I'm hoping I can utilize all that, put my equipment in, and have a safe working setup, you know, that's not a fire hazard. This is what I was talking about. You got relays, fuses, and diodes. And if you go over the panel, a lot of this stuff is police car only. So we'll have to dig into that and get a detailed list on what all of this is. But for the most part, if you look at the lights and whatnot down here, nothing seems to have really been spliced in. We're going to have to go through this harness here that was damaged and make sure, see what all of these wires go to. But apparently I'm thinking we can just get the one under the dash and hopefully we can trace those wires out. I think once we trace those wires out, we'll have a good idea where they all go, and I should be able to get the relays and whatnot to make everything flash again. So looking forward to that. On a side note, this is what I was talking about. When you start mixing pieces of cars, you start having problems. I can get it to a line, you know, up to about here, and that's because this is all shoved over. But I'm having a hard time getting it to a line on this side. I can get it a line pretty straight, but this is a different fender off a different car, so it's perfectly straight. It hasn't been shoved over with the rest of everything. So this front end and the sheet metal alignment is going to be something that we're going to be tackling here shortly. Okay, so what we're going to do now is take the console, and we're going to set it right here and just see how it sits between the seats. So now take the console here, and we're just going to drop it in. It's going to have to sit. It's going to be a little tight between the seats, but what's going to happen here is this little slide, this thing will slide back and forth. So what we need to do now is, once we figure out where the mounting points are in the floorboard where they've drilled the holes, we're going to pop this top off and then mount this mounting plate in, and then we will slide the console back and forth wherever it needs to sit. So let's take this top off and see where this is sitting, and then we'll go from there. Since I have to go back to work here day after tomorrow, it's Saturday right now, we're not going to go ahead and we're not going to mount this console in. This car actually had a different style of console, so I have to figure out how to make all the holes work right. And I don't, with the quarantine and all that stuff going on, there's really not a metal store I can go to, and there's just, stuff's pretty hard to get at the moment. But you see generally what's going to happen. It actually feels really good sitting right here. So we're going to take it apart and get it all set up probably in the next video, and then start going through the wiring so we can get this mounted up where it's supposed to be and build any brackets as we have to. And hopefully we can get the wires all, at least them all charted. We might have to take part of the car apart, so that's going to suck, but if you want to use the wiring, that's what you have to do. So let me go show you what else we're going to go over here soon, and then we'll wrap this thing up. As I said, you know, we talked about the wiring and all that, and I have to trace it and getting the console all set up here. This isn't its permanent home, of course, so we'll do that. This is the odd thing about this car. It was obviously a police car. It did come from a police department, and that's much as sure. But we don't know much else about it. On the back, you can see where there were some antennas mounted on the inside of the trunk. There's screw holes there on the lip. But aside from that, there's no holes in the roof. There's no holes in the back deck. So this car had all the lights and sirens and wires and all that, but it didn't have any external lights other than the spotlight, and the headlights most likely flashed and the tail lights most likely flashed, and I would imagine it probably had a siren, so it was probably a chief's car, a commander's car, or some kind of public service. It had really low miles on it when it was bought by the previous owner, so we're still figuring out the history of this and trying to figure out what we need to run and what we need to set up. I have no desire to drill any more holes in the car because that brings rust. But if I can use the existing wiring harness, that'll be great. So in order to do this correctly and not start a fire, I need to get a schematic put together. That's pretty much the long and the short of it. The console's cool. It fits. It's a little tight, but it's supposed to be a little tight. And we'll get it all screwed down when we figure out how to mount it. And I can build a mounting tray to use the existing bolt holes. As far as I found, there's only one, and I think this actually went and butted up against the dash. I think it was a flat console rather than a curve like this. But that being said, you know, it is what it is, so we'll have to make lemonade with what we got. But that's kind of what's going on here, so I hope you liked the video. There wasn't a whole lot to it. We got some equipment, we got some stuff. I tried not to put any real filler in it. So I'm getting all excited. We'll get the console done up here soon. I'm going to have to get some aluminum and make some face plates, and then cut some holes out so we can mount the switches and the radio up in there, and then figure out where all the wires go so we can run them to different speakers and whatnot. That way we can have at least have a siren. That'd be kind of fun. So I hope you liked the video. If you got any comments or likes, please like, share, subscribe, and We'll catch you next video. Thanks for watching.